Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining me from. My name is Barton Seaver. I am joining you here from the ragged, jagged, delicious coast of Maine, where my delightful ladyfish wife and my two sons, the kid squids, and I live here on a little farm right on the water. Life is good, life is delicious. And this morning, life was without power. So any of you who have joined me before know that I like to start off these episodes with something that I am grateful for. Why? Well, because cooking is an act of love. It is an act of kindness. It is something that we do for others, right? And the very first ingredient in that is gratitude. So something I'm grateful for is light. Yeah, power, heat. Because here on the coast of Maine, it's still really kind of cold. So I hope that you are having a wonderful, beautiful day wherever it is you're joining me from. I really appreciate that you did choose to spend some of your time with me in this open office hours. I believe that a number of you are new students to Ruby, so welcome to the Ruby family. Any of you who have been with us for a little while, it's lovely to have you here. Lovely to have you back. Thank you. So, open office hours. What do we do in open office hours? We answer any questions you've got. I mean, we've already got some really fun questions here over in the side area there. And to give you a little rundown of how this works. So over in the text box to the right-hand side of your screen, you will see an area to write in your questions. If there is a question in the queue that is particularly relevant to you, that you're particularly interested in, click that little heart icon to vote it up to the top to make sure I get to it. I've got about a hard hour with you today before, well, daycare. I've got to take care of my little kid squids a little bit later today. So we'll try and get through everything today for you. Let's see. Otherwise, also just beneath the screen there, if you'll see, there's a little donate now button to benefit World Central Kitchens. This is Jose Andres, the legendary chef, humanitarian. I actually used to work for him running his flagship in Washington, D.C., so and learned a whole lot from him. Anyway, World Central Kitchen is on the front lines in Ukraine, feeding refugees and anyone in need. And any donations you can make, even $1, and I mean, anything goes directly to helping improve people's lives, their circumstances through food. Isn't that what we're all here to do in some form, shape, or another, right? So with that, I want to express my gratitude again to you for joining. Let's dive in. Got a couple of great questions here. Is it possible to turn your passion into profit in your own home? Depends what your passion is, I guess. If so, what kind of licenses might one need? Thanks, Randy C. Hey, Randy. Well, as I said, it depends on what your passion is. If you're talking about smoking meat, it's going to be pretty complicated. If you're talking about making jams or jellies or pickles, it would be a little less complicated. So there's a whole diverse range of things that we can do out of our homes, whether you're making spices, etc., blends. It also really depends on your state. That's really the key there. And excuse me, Randy, I'm assuming that you are living in the United States. Randy, if you could actually type in maybe a little bit extra information there, I could probably answer your question a little bit better. So sort of what is your passion and where do you live might help. So if you can type that in, then I can come back to your question. I'll take another question first, and then hopefully we'll hear back from you. Otherwise, I'll just give you the best answer I can. Okay, down to Victoria K. Hi, friend. Nice to see your name. How do I cut a butternut squash into even bite-sized pieces for roasting? Good question. And you know what? I'm going to demo this for you because look what I have. Ooh. Big Daddy Butternut right there. And I'm assuming, I think, let me just check my video feed here. Yeah, yep, you can see the cutting board just well enough. So I'm going to step back. So the first thing to know about butternut squash is it's dangerous. Why? Well, because it's big, it's rolly, and it's hard. Okay? So those are all very dangerous things. Why? Because you have to apply a lot of pressure with a knife to get through the skin and then through that dense flesh. And if this whole thing is rolling around on you and you're putting a lot of pressure on it, you're setting yourself up for a potential injury. So one of the things that I do in the first cut that I make is that you basically also have two different sections of a butternut squash, right? You have the seed bulb and you have the stalk or the shaft or whatever, the sort of the dense full part. So these are cut differently. So the first thing I do is a safe cut right around where I think those seeds are going to end. I'll pull this to the very end of the cutting board to make sure you can see it. I'll put it right there, and then I will use a big knife that's capable of getting all the way through, and I'll just kind of whack it down a little bit. And then once it's through, I'm working the knife, right? I'm not like, I'm not trying to manhandle this thing. Let the tool do the work. Where's my hand? It's over here. Keep it away. And that is how you cut a butternut squash. Demo done. No, I'm just kidding. Excuse me. Try and cut your butternut squash on a cutting board. That would help. I'll clean up all those seeds later. Anyway, hey, the joys of live TV or whatever we call this. So you now have the hollow section here. You have the stalk section here with a couple of the seeds, depending on it. Next cut I will make is up at the top. Again, using the knife, not putting a lot of pressure on it, because as soon as you put a lot of pressure on it, you're just creating, well, you're creating the opportunity for injury. Now, something that's important is, what do I have here? I have a flat surface, okay? That really matters. Why? Because now you have something stable and steady to work with. In addition to a knife to peel, which you can do just by long, smooth strokes all the way down. And you want to take off as little as you can. You want to stay safe always. But the other thing you can do, especially on smaller butternuts, if you have a strong peeler, you can go down like this and don't expect to get big strips out of it. This works a little bit better on smaller butternuts where you have just a better angle or sort of ratio. So you can go down around that way. One fun thing to do is, once you've gotten it peeled, you can even keep peeling it like this into long, thin strip ribbons like this, which are actually delicious when marinated in a little bit of vinegar, a little olive oil, some salt. Let them soften up a little bit. Throw those raw into a salad. It's really kind of delicious, and it's completely different flavor. So just for the sake of demo and time here, I'm just going to keep going all the way around. So I make nice, smooth, clean cuts, taking off as little of the flesh as possible. And then you have this. Now again, what I'm looking to work with here is the flat side. Give me the stability. So instead of turning it over and trying to cut it like this, what I find best is then to cut vertically, okay? So bite-sized roastable pieces, you want something that's going to give you enough size so that you can get some caramelization on it. So you can get some color, that color differentiation. You can get also that flavor differentiation, possibly even some texture. So you want it to be big enough bite size so that it can cook long enough to get those aspects, which improve the quality of the final dish. But you don't want it to be so big that it takes too long or that it's not bite size. So I'm going to guess about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to say, well, there's about 4 sections, okay? And just straight down through. And you see I'm just using single long knife strokes. And at this point, it's very easy to carve out that little section of seeds. Really, all you need to do is get rid of the seeds, not so much that membrane tissue. And then you're just working across into diced pieces, right? And this is a great thing to practice your knife skills on, see how exact of a cube you can get, etc. I would never recommend cutting sitting down, as I just did. So, and there you go. Perfect little bite-sized pieces. They're going to be big enough to get some color. You're going to have some differentiation in there. You're going to have some pieces like this, yes, of course, etc. On the outsides, you're going to end up with pieces that are a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger. That's okay. Some of that differentiation is fine. Unless you're working in a 3-star Michelin restaurant, then yeah, you're probably not cutting bite-sized butternut squash pieces anyway. You're probably making an emulsified, sexified foam of them in some form or fashion or whatnot, right? So there you go. And for the bottom piece, I would do the same thing. Give yourself a, see how I'm doing? Just using the knife as a tool, small slices, and then I have a solid foundation to work from. And again, same thing, cut all the way around. One of the reasons why I really like, and I grow on my own farm, I grow the honey nut squash, which is basically a 2-person butternut squash with all of the flavor, just a lot less of the water. That's kind of just a more intense butternut squash. You now have this hollow core. So a couple of different suggestions for this. You can cut the outsides, dice that up just as you did here, and then continue to go through. And with these pieces, 3 cuts right there is probably enough just to get that out. You can also, of course, use a spoon to hollow out those seeds. But then you have these pretty angular pieces to it. So you can go, you get 2 relatively smaller pieces, but those are going to roast about the same time. And then you have these larger end pieces that you can cut and end up with relatively uniform pieces all the way throughout for a whole butternut. So there you go. If you are not using the whole butternut all at once, which that butternut would feed a lot of people, I would recommend leaving the peel on and just cutting off a section that you think you're going to need or so. And then wrapping tightly with plastic wrap the cut side, and then just leaving it in your refrigerator or even on the countertop, etc. if you're going to use it the next day. So there you go. Hey, thanks for your question, Victoria. Great one. Appreciate the demo. Make this an action office hours pretty quickly. I'm just going to scoot all of this to the side so that my brain isn't organized like a bunch of diced butternut there. All right, cool. Cheers. All right, from Dana S. Dana S. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. When I have an excess of herbs, what's the best way to preserve them for future use? Should I leave them whole or chop them, or should I dehydrate or freeze them? Thanks. Of course. This is a great question and one we answer pretty regularly. So it's something that a lot of people are dealing with. There's a number of different ways to go about this. The first is to kind of categorize your herb. Is it hard or is it soft? Hard herbs, thyme, rosemary, lavender, bay leaves, lemongrass, etc. Those are things that last a lot longer. They're just more durable than, say, very fine parsley or cilantro, etc., dill. Those hard herbs, the way to go about using, there's a couple. So you can dehydrate them into a dried herb form, which is very usable because the flavor doesn't change so much as it does with soft herbs. If you dehydrate soft herbs, I think you end up with basically a separate ingredient as opposed to dried rosemary versus fresh rosemary. You lose some of those nuances for sure, but by and large, it's the same sort of thing and provides the same purpose in a dish. You can chop them up or blend them with some oil and then freeze the oil in little cubes in, say, an ice cube tray that's specifically designed for that purpose, because otherwise your drinks will all taste like whatever you made. You can certainly just freeze them whole as is. I don't necessarily recommend that. You're gonna lose some of the elegance of it. It'll be pretty blunt coming out. With soft herbs, you can make a pesto. So go ahead and just make the whole recipe and then freeze a pesto. And a pesto doesn't have to be cheese and nuts and oil and all that. It could just be the basic foundations of it. So just some oil and the herbs and a little bit of salt, or perhaps a little bit of garlic. Garlic, being an antioxidant, keeps the green color. So you can make a puree out of that, or even just a rough chop and then mix some oil in so that you still get some of that visual presence of it. And again, freeze those either in little plastic baggies or in an ice cube tray. Dehydrating, as I mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of. Quite honestly, leave that to the pros. If you want dehydrated dill, get the stuff that's made in a professional dehydrator. I think the quality is just going to be better there. So in all of this, I would also ask, why do you have extra herbs? Now, understanding that some people are cooking for one, some people have herb gardens, etc. There's all sorts of different reasons why you might have leftover herbs. But here is my suggestion. Use more herbs. They're delicious. It's not just a garnish. Herbs are wonderful. They're healthful. They have incredible flavor, as we know. And when they are incorporated into a dish thoughtfully, say, a salad where you have parsley and cilantro leaves mixed right in there, some of the stems as well for some texture, as well as some sort of architecture and structural integrity to a salad. Wow, they're absolutely wonderful. Now, you need to adjust maybe the dressing that you're using, maybe add a little bit of sweetness to it to counterbalance the full flavor of those herbs. Maybe add a little bit more acidity as well to kind of add a counterpoint to those herbs. But by and large, I would say that the easiest way to use up leftover herbs is to just use them up as is on the spot. Whether that's a salad, whether you're sauteing some zucchini, throw in a half bunch of cilantro, make it a zucchini and cilantro dish. I think we all too often just think of herbs as garnish rather than as an essential ingredient. And I would urge you to think that way. So cheers. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate the question. All right, from Priscilla. Moving on here, when sectioning oranges or grapefruit, how do you make the sections perfect and take out the seeds? It always messes up the perfect sections. Any suggestions? Yeah, hold on a second. Let me go grab a grapefruit. Boop-a-doo. All right. I'm going to use a slightly smaller knife for this. So when sectioning grapefruits, one good way to start with this is to look for seedless fruit, right? Not always available, not always the best quality, etc. Make sure it meets all of your other criteria, of course. But seedless or mostly seedless fruit is going to go a long way towards helping you. So to segment citrus, I cut off the top and the bottom. I'm sorry, I'm going to do this back here again so I can make sure that you can see it. So I cut off the top, I cut off the bottom to make a nice level platform. And then I'm going around, and this grapefruit is nice and big, so I can afford to take off a little bit of that flesh so as to avoid any bits of that pith. Also, grapefruit pith is more bitter than other citrus fruits piths are, I find. Part of that is because grapefruit doesn't have the overt sweetness that other citrus fruits can have. So it maybe just sort of appears more. So to then segment, there's two different ways you can go about this. You're going between those lines of the pith there that holds them together. You can go on the left and the right to remove it out like this. Or as I do, I tend to go down and then flip it out. So again, down, right along that piece of pith, and then I just flip it out. And that takes it all, that 100% of that flesh off of the opposite side. So you're actually getting a better segment that way. And just by flipping them out, I mean, also, how easy is that? If I wasn't talking to you, I'd probably be done with this thing already. I'm not blaming you for slowing me down. I'm just saying it's quick and it's easy, right? See how easy this is? I'm just flicking them out. And what else is nice is that when you do that, those seeds tend to stay down there. You don't need to go all the way into the core. Go just until you feel a little bit of resistance and then just flick them out. Now I've got a couple of seeds in my bowl here, but that's a couple, and that's pretty easy to deal with. And then of course you squeeze to get the remainder of all that juice out of there. And then the segments that I have end up looking pretty darn nice, right? I mean, that is a nice full segment. A grapefruit is an easier fruit to work with, just it's a little bit bigger, especially in the late season as we are in now. Some of those grapefruits, they're just super ripe. They're just easier to work with. So I'm just pulling out tiny little bits of seeds. I'm also lucky because the whole thing was nearly seedless. There's probably only 5 or 6 seeds in the whole thing. I'm getting just those itty bitty ones. So there you go. And you get a nice bowl of grapefruit segments. If your orange or lime or lemon, whatever you're doing, is particularly seedy, and I know what you're talking about. I mean, I've seen these, especially with like Valencia oranges, juice oranges, etc. They can be really seedy because they haven't really been bred for segments, because they're vast majority of them are just getting processed into juice, right? So it doesn't matter so much. So in that sense, buy citrus that is sort of meant for whole consumption more so than juice, right? Because you're just going to have selective breeding, not genetically modified, just selective breeding that's going to yield you probably less seeds. So that's a great place to start. But if you do have seeds in there, and I know what you're talking about, they can get really deep down embedded. Kind of, if you're really that concerned about the look and the appearance of it, get in there and just kind of whittle them out with the tip of a knife as best you can, and be okay with the fact that, well, it's probably going to break. So there you go. Why don't you just break all of them and pretend like you meant to? Cheers. I'm going to wash my hands. I'll be right back. Which leads me to kind of another answer to that question. Well, picking up on my answer to that question, which is perception really matters, right? If you're going for perfect and you're trying to put this absolutely perfect grapefruit segments on the plate, etc., well, then you've set that threshold for yourself. Or if you're in a restaurant, obviously, you know, that set by the chef, whatever she deems necessary for the dish. In my kitchen at home, and I'm not a restaurant chef anymore. I was for many, many years, where it did really matter because I was operating at a very high level. But I was also operating in a restaurant where we didn't like waste. And that was a big part of our sustainability push. So, hey, if the grapefruit segments break and you did your best, that's what you're getting. So I would urge you to not only think about the technique itself, but also the need for that technique and what are the underlying factors driving that decision. Cheers. Thanks, Priscilla. Appreciate you. All right, from Angela, how do you keep beans intact when soaking? Our water seems to make them split or burst, and they don't look as pretty on the plate. Interesting. So I believe we sent over a message. There's a really great article in the New York Times by Melissa Clark about how to cook beans, which she debunks a whole lot of myths and goes through every method, nearly, not every bean, but a dozen or so plus beans in terms of cooking times, etc., pressure cooker, slow cooker, stovetop, to soak, not to soak, baking soda, etc. I would go to that resource, check that out. Basically, she says to not soak. She says, and backs it up with proof, that soaking really just takes about an hour of cooking time off of the entire thing. So if you have an extra hour to cook your beans, so 2 hours instead of 1 hour, I would just go with that. I don't know what the chemistry is of your water, nor do I know how old the beans are that you are using. I know that those are two factors that can really impact how the beans process and how they cook. I have the same thing, that sometimes I'm using the picante beans, and those will split open in my water. I haven't gone through the trouble of using distilled water from a bottle or anything like that, just to see what the difference is. Our water is a little bit hard here, but it's it's closer to neutral than I would say to full hard. So I would mess around with that. Check out that link. Richard just posted that up there for you. So that's up at the top of the queue there, how to cook beans. Thank you for that, Richard, my colleague over at Ruby, who makes all of these things possible. So thank you to him. So check that out. Hey, Angela, thank you so much. Appreciate you. All right, from Marcy J. Hi, friend. Nice to see you. I am working through the Pro Plant course and really enjoying it, but you still eat fish. I'm with you on that one. I'm starting to do a few catering events. Any resource recommendations on how to plan food amounts costs? Thank you so much. You got it. Nothing off the top of my head, Marcy, but if you Google that, I believe that there's even a website called chefsource.com or chefsresource.com, I believe, that does a pretty nice job of this and has some of those tools and tips and techniques. But that's basic food costing. And if you just search a course on that, I think you probably find some good resources there. The American Culinary Federation would be a really great place to look for this as well. That's the Apprenticeship Chef Society here in America. A really, really great organization, does great work. Our Ruby courses are affiliated with them. That is their bailiwick. That is what they do. They provide resources for chefs, and this would be right up their alley. So check those out. I'm sorry I don't have anything off the top of my head, but I'll send you on not a rabbit chase through the internet, but a pretty dedicated hunt. I think those destinations will do you well. And here's your second question about catering a Moroccan theme for 250 people, buffet and casual. So Marcy, let me point out something to you. You're still learning how to do food costing. You're just starting to do catering events, and lo and behold, you're doing a Moroccan theme buffet and casual dinner for 250 people. You're awesome. Good for you. Yes, good for you. Go rock it. That's awesome. I love to see that confidence. That's so cool. Just get out there and do it. Because you know what? Yes. Everybody is giving you a big hand right now, because that takes courage, and that's just awesome. It's what we need in the world. Awesome. So, any comments or suggestions for one main you could tweak to do both plant-based version and one with meat? Something you also need to prep in advance and reheat at the venue. Okay, well, here you go. The national Moroccan dish, if there is such a thing, but a very, very common dish, and something that, well, I lived in Morocco for a while. I worked as a fisherman over there. One of the better times of my life. Oh, it was fun. I ate a lot of couscous in what's known as the tagine, which is the classic clay, the conical clay cooking vessel in which the couscous is washed and then fluffed and then cooked either in a broth or with flavorful ingredients on top of it. And it's cooked in these tagine dishes, which capture rising moisture and then funnel it back down. It condensates and then funnels back down. This is fairly common with some baking dishes, which I'll show you. Sorry, y'all. So like a Staub cocotte dish, which I have one of these. Same kind of idea. These little nipples or nodules right here will help condensed water as it rises. It will help them drip back down into the cooking vessel to keep rehydrating and keeping moist your dish. A tagine works in that very same way, but just a simpler form, and I think maybe even a more effective technology. And couscous it's wonderful. So it's plant forward. You can, one of the very best dishes I ever ate in Paris when I was over there for a month with my wife, living in the 11th arrondissement. We went to this Moroccan restaurant, and they served this couscous that had been simmered in a vegetable broth that had turnips in it. And the turnips, the turnips, celery, onion, carrot, but it was the turnips that really made this whole thing incredible. And then it was garnished with some fresh mint over top at the very end. Woo! Yes, it was very, very good. And the broth was served on the side. It was fantastic. Throw a couple of pieces of braised lamb on top of that. You're staying very traditional, especially if you're seasoning the lamb with maybe some paprika, cinnamon, garlic, some coriander, maybe a little bit of cumin in there, tomato paste, a rich tomato paste in the braising liquid, something like that. Wow. You've got a really, really compelling dish. You've got colorful, flavorful dishes. And oh, by the way, can you reheat them on premise? Yes, you can. It's super, super easy. And they're very, very forgiving dishes, meaning they sit on a buffet and hold their quality for a long time. There you go. Hey, again, Marcy, I just think the world of what you're trying to do. So good for you. Go out and get them. And you know what? Come back to us and tell us how it went someday. Join us again in another event. Cool. Hey, Judith T. Nice to see you, friend. You're in a rut with side dishes for fish as the protein. Can you tell us some of your favorites? Absolutely. Well, Judith, I am still, as you are, up in Chicago. You're probably in Chicago now, maybe Florida. You're probably back in Chicago. So your climate is like ours. You're still eating rutabagas and carrots and turnips, and you're still having some cold days here and there. So one of my very favorite side dishes actually kind of incorporates the fish, roasted root vegetables. And then right at the very end, I take mayonnaise with a tin of anchovies and their oil chopped up, mixed into that, some fresh herbs, cilantro and parsley, and maybe a clove of grated garlic in there just to add a little bit of spice. So mix that all together. And as soon as the vegetables come out of the oven, excuse me. Ooh, am I going to sneeze? Yes, I am going to sneeze. Excuse me. Ooh. As soon as the vegetables come out of the oven, you toss them in a bowl with this mayonnaise mixture and then throw them back under a broiler for like 3, 4, 5 minutes or so. They get nice and crusty. That mayonnaise adds a really rich layer to them without adding a whole lot of fat. You don't have to use much mayonnaise. You literally just have to enough to coat them very, very lightly. It's really the vehicle by which all of those other flavors get dispersed, excuse me. So I would say something like that is great. Mashed rutabaga with a little bit of butter. Cut the butter with maybe a little bit of sour cream or labna or Greek yogurt is a really, really fun way to eat that. The acidity of the Greek yogurt or the labna or the sour cream really punches that flavor up and brings out that sweetness. Make sure you salt it well to really get all that flavor out of there. Let's see, other ones. It is coming into spring, so nice fresh salads. I love a shaved vegetable salad on the side of fish. I know that you've got a couple of my books, so I believe you have For Cod and Country. I think I sent you that one. There's a dish in there called Carrie Ann's salad, my lovely ladyfish's favorite salad. Or no, it's Carrie Ann's beet salad, which is right next to a shaved fennel salad in the book. So thin shaved fennel, carrot, red pepper, very thin little shaved pieces. Just any nice hearty vinaigrette on that, whole grain mustard, maybe with a little rosemary pounded into it, maybe some anchovies is a delightful way. And that adds so much crunch and texture to the dish, especially if you put that next to the rutabagas or something. So you have soft and creamy, the delicious, perfectly cooked fish, as I'm sure that you are executing perfectly on every time. And this nice crunchy fennel salad, throw in some cilantro leaves, etc. And you've got this incredible, nutritious, healthful, delightful to look at dish. So there's a couple. And let me think of one more that I did recently. Peas and mint. There you go. Super simple. That's easy. And how about an eggplant salad for you? I got these little fairy tale eggplants. Right? Stores have these around these days, right? I've got these. I got these at Whole Foods, I think. Dice them up into nice large pieces, so something about an inch or so. Salt them for 10 minutes in a colander. Just let them drain out. And then drop them into boiling, salted, acidulated water. Cook them for 2 to 4 minutes or so, just till they begin to wilt and get a little bit soft. And the color changes just subtly. You don't want to cook them down to mush by any means. You want them, this is going to be a room temperature salad. So take them out, drain them off, and let them sit on a paper towel or something to really let them drain. Don't squish them, don't smush them. And then you're going to make a salad with maybe a little bit more vinegar in there, some chopped fresh raw shallots, maybe a little bit of microplane garlic, some olive oil, some fresh herbs. You can serve that warm. You can serve it room temperature. You can serve it chilled. The eggplant will soak up that olive oil and all of those flavors. It's best to give this a couple hours ahead of time. Even make it a day ahead of time. Make a giant batch a day ahead of time. And just portion it out as you will. Bring it back up to room temperature. So fun, light, bright, exciting dishes. A couple of winter dishes in there for you too. Hey, Judith, nice to hear from you. It's always a pleasure. All right, from Bev. Hi there. Nice to see a new name. Do you have any tips on how to make a perfect vegan mashed potato? Oh, yeah, I do. So the key to mashed potatoes is picking the right potatoes. Not all potatoes are created equal. Some are waxy, some are starchy, some are a bit of both. Some are just not really worth eating, in my opinion, like purple potatoes. I just don't really, well, there's nothing that's not worth eating. There's only a lack of skill on the cook's part. So I'm going to say I have not developed the skill yet to really enjoy purple potatoes, right? Let's not blame nature for humans' failures. That's on me. So picking the right potatoes, I really like a Dutch wax potato. I think those, I like the texture of a slightly starchy, but also a little bit gummy mashed potato, where it has some spoonable texture to it. Other people just like the classic russets, you know, that nice, light, fluffy. But the key to all of this is once you've steamed or boiled your potatoes, let them dry. Give them a few minutes just on the countertop to steam themselves dry. And you'll begin to see this, that the color will change to that sort of, you know, bright, pale white color rather than the sort of the cooked potato color. And what that does is that just gets rid of a little bit of that cooking moisture for it. It concentrates the flavor, which I like. Potatoes taste really good, right? It's not just, potatoes are not just a socially acceptable conveyance of ketchup and butter and cream to our faces. They actually taste good on their own. And by dehydrating them just a little bit after they've cooked, letting them steam off and dry, you're concentrating that flavor. So you don't have to use, you know, you're not going to find yourself missing the butter nearly as much. Sure, you can, I like a good soft olive oil in mashed potatoes often. And another flavor tip is to boil whole cloves of garlic in with your potatoes. They will lose their pungency. Just throw them in right with the cold water when you start your potatoes. They'll lose their pungency, gets really soft and sweet, and seamlessly integrate right into the mashed potato, add so much flavor, will help to soften and smooth them as well. And just olive oil is really the way that I go, or you could just use cooking water. So the other thing I forgot to mention is if you're boiling potatoes on the stovetop, have you ever tasted potato water at the end of boiling potatoes? What does it taste like? Tastes a lot like potatoes, right? And when you pour it off, what's at the bottom of it? Like a whole lot of potato funk, right? There it is. Like there's actual potato in the water you're pouring off. So when you are covering your potatoes, just barely cover them. If you have this much potatoes and this much water, you're creating an environment where you got to add so much more energy to the pot, which is a sustainability concern, just to get all of that water that you're going to waste up to temperature. And then you have that much water in cooking those small amount of potatoes. It's harder to manage the heat, to bring it back down to a simmer, right? So I like more control. So if you got this much potatoes, add this much water. You want to make sure that they're covered the entire time, right? So shake out the potatoes, make sure they kind of settle in the bottom, and then just enough water to cover them. In this way, that potato water, all that water that absorbs potato flavor, you're going to leave a lot more flavor in your potatoes. It's going to be easier to salt them from the get-go because you're not trying to salt this much water to get this many potatoes, right? You've just got more control over the whole thing. It's going to take less time because you're not trying to cook water. So there you go. There's a couple of techniques for you. One more Spanish technique for you is to take grated garlic and simmer it in olive oil, maybe with a couple of bay leaves on the side over there, until it gets nutty, golden brown, and then use that, mix that right into the mashed potatoes. That garlic will lose all of its color. The olive oil will add sort of this nice little yellow sheen to them, but they'll still look like these beautiful mashed potatoes. They have this incredible aroma, that nutty, buttery richness that olive oil and garlic combined have. That's very Spanish style, puré de pata. And yeah, anyway, there you go. I hope you enjoy those. And of course, one other thing actually that I've been experimenting with is some vegan Parmesan cheese that my son picked out for his lunches. That I throw into mashed potatoes, some roasted potatoes the other day, and it was delicious. So maybe some of that as well, just to spike up that umami-rich flavor. Cheers. Thanks, Bev. Appreciate you. All right, from Christina, what fry pan brand do you recommend? I have Calphalon, but it is warped and doesn't sit level on my electric flat top, and it's no longer non-stick. Wow. Okay. So cast iron pans is the way to go for me. Also cast steel. So I just got this recently from Misen, M-I-S-E-N. They just did a Kickstarter for another round of these pans, which come pre-seasoned. But this is cast steel. It's lighter than cast iron, so it's a little easier on the wrists. it will not warp unless you go out of your way to throw it in a ceramics oven and then bang it on the wall several times. Are you going to do that? Yeah, okay. No. Yeah. Wedding rings. Yes. These pans will stay flat. They heat up very quickly. They heat up very efficiently. They hold heat very well, almost as well as cast iron does. They're kind of beautiful to me. They develop this nice patina. I have never washed this with anything but water. And by the end of it, this will be completely black. But you can scrape off any little bits on there so you still get a full saute sear. So this is as good for low saute zucchini as it is for high searing burgers, whatever you're doing in it, etc. As I said, Misin just launched a Kickstarter, just finished a Kickstarter. So coming in November, I believe October, they're going to offer a line of these that are pre-seasoned. The only thing to recommend against these, the unseasoned ones, is that it's a bit of a pain to season them. You have to heat it up on the stove and then brush oil in it, brush the oil out of it, throw it in an oven for an hour, and do that maybe 5 to 10 times. It's a lot of work. But let me tell you this. Every restaurant that I ever owned, which was 7 of them, these were the only pans we used. Not necessarily this brand. I recommend this brand. Matfer, M-A-T-F-E-R, makes another really good one. But just look up cast steel saute pans. They make them in every size you can imagine, from 8 to 10 to 12. This is a 10. So there you go. Cheers. All right, and I see another comment from you. You live in Cocoa, Florida. Well, isn't that a nice place? Where it's a little chilly today. You have avocado, mango, papaya, starfruit, loquat trees, and pineapple growing in your yard. You're just messing with me. You're just messing with me. My daffodils are that far out of the ground. My crocuses, they're about to croak. But yeah. You're a bit far ahead of us. So thank you for sharing a little bit of your delicious warmth with us. I hope that you get through your chilly day. You know how I got through my chilly day today? Is I made a Parmesan brodo. I had some chicken stock. You make this vegetable stock. And I had some leftover Parmesan rinds that I had sitting around that I collect. And simmered those into the broth. Yeah, a little bit of Calabrian chili paste. And then a couple drops of lemon juice and a good healthy glug of oil in there. Olive oil, of course. It made me happy. It made me very happy. Cool. All right. Wow, I've not seen this name before. Empamenonas. I'm sorry. I haven't slept in 3 days, so. Hey, friend, how are you? Empamenonas. My phonetics are terrible today. Please forgive me. I mean no disrespect. I'm thrilled that you're here for us. Let me answer your question. Hey, from Greece. I thought that would be a Greek name. What's your take on the Mediterranean diet? I think it would be very nice to have a Ruby course based on it for people who are reluctant to move to strictly plant-based. Yes. Well, it's an interesting idea. I will take that to the team here at Ruby. My take on the Mediterranean diet, though, is, that's my diet, really. I eat very, very little meat. I eat a lot of seafood. That is my thing. I'm the core instructor and creator of the seafood literacy course here on Ruby. That's my bailiwick. That's what I do. I've got 8 seafood-centric cookbooks out there in the world. And seafood sustainability is my beat. So I'm very pro seafood in the diet, but really I eat a diet based on plants, grains, greens, legumes, vegetables, things that are photosynthetic. So my take on that is, to me, it is, to my opinion, for my own palate, it is how I choose to eat. I love the flavors. I love the sensuousness and diversity of olive oils and all that you can do with that. I have never, ever found the Mediterranean diet to feel limiting in any way, shape, or form. Once you get into that, once you start eating that food, and I might not even call it diet, I'd say Mediterranean food culture might be a more sort of socially acceptable way to recommend this. Once you start eating like that, that's what your body craves. And I eat just as much meat as I want to, which is not very much. Why? because I'm so enamored with all of the flavors and the colors and the seasonalities and the mixtures and the multi-component meals and dishes. And it's just, I mean, hey, that's what makes cooking fun. And it's what makes eating delicious. And isn't that what we're all here for? Oh, and by the way, it's really healthful, which keeps us around so that we can cook more, so that we can eat more. Well, isn't this a virtuous circle? Mediterranean food culture, also known as the Mediterranean diet. Hey, thank you so much for your comment. I will, of course, take that, as I said, to the team here. So I appreciate you joining me. Thanks, friend. Hey, Diane, what is acidulated water? Okay, good question. Just water with a good spike of vinegar in it. So I've got, what do I got here? I use a lot of sherry vinegar. Sherry vinegar is my favorite. It's so I buy these. This is the Saffi brand, S-A-F-F-I. I get that online. That's a 3-liter box, maybe more than you need. I do a lot of cooking, and vinegar lasts a while, especially in a box like that. And I've just got it convenient next to the olive oil, and there you go. So acidulated water is meant to just add that spike of flavor in that cooking process, especially with things like potatoes or eggplant, zucchini, things that are going to suck up a lot of water in the cooking process. You want that water, if you want the dish, the final dish acidulated, it can be very effective to acidulate it at the outset, right? Rather than trying to force it in from the surface after the fact. So when I make German potato salad, I don't put the vinegar on after the fact. I put it right into the water. And then I will adjust it with some vinegar after the fact if need be. So that's acidulated water. Do you have to do that? Absolutely not. It's just technique that I've picked up and that I particularly like for vegetables. So also with, if you're poaching seafood or a chicken breast, etc., that acidity in there will help proteins coagulate. It will help the structural integrity of your fillet or whatever you're working with. So there you go. Cheers. Thanks, Dan. From Regina, hi there. I'd love to have a microgreen garden for garnishing desserts. Might you have any tips on growing your own microgreens, edible flowers? Regina, yeah. Find a sunny window and go for it. Buy good indoor soil. Don't buy raised bed soil or anything like that. Just there are mites, there are bugs, there's all sorts of good stuff in it. Good stuff. Like most people think those are better outside than they are inside. So indoor potting soil, etc. Get some good amendments in the form of some organic compost to keep adding into it. Microgreens are not nutrient hungry. Really, they don't take much out of the soil, but the bottom line is you are going to be snipping and cutting at a very early stage in the plant's life cycle. So it's drawing a lot of energy from that seed, necessarily more so than from the soil. But still, amend your soil with a little bit of good compost in there. Throw some kitchen scraps in at the bottom. Something that's not going to stink. Something that will add help with moisture retention, etc. Find a good sunny window. Get a squirt gun if you have a cat. Pew, pew. Yep, we just got a new sofa in our bedroom where our cat likes to sleep. That first night we had the sofa, we went online and bought a super soaker. Yeah, so the cat's going to learn a lesson on that. We love our cat. We're never going to abuse her, but she needs to learn her space. So keep them away from any cats or any other animals you have that will love to gnaw your microgreens. And pick a diversity of microgreens too. I find that microgreens are kind of boring if it's just one type. So I love a diversity in there. And, pick some things like arugula or cilantro, micro basil, things like that. Maybe a little bit outside of the sort of the typical thought process of what goes with desserts, but you might find that it can be really compelling to mix a little bit of those sort of thought of as savory ingredients in there, especially because the flavor isn't overpowering, but just a little hint of spicy, peppery arugula bite on top of a nice chocolate dessert or a nice berry flan or something. Woo! I mean, that can really go a long way. So the other thing is have fun with it, man. It's awesome. But also be warned that you're going to end up with macro greens at some point because, yeah, you're going to go away for 2 days and they're just going to sprout up, etc. So hope you like salads. I'm sure you do. Cheers. Thanks. Great question. I hope you have fun with that. From SR. I do not see pickles on the Forks Over Knives shopping list. Is there a reason why they're not on the list? Perhaps the sodium content. I just made the steamed potatoes with caper aioli, and they were very salty as well. I am not actually that integrated into the Forks Over Knives program. I do imagine that it would be the sodium content in pickles, which tends to be very high. So I don't have an exact answer for you on that, but you know what? I'm going to send this question over. Richard, my partner over at Ruby, if we could make sure this question gets over to one of our plant-based instructors there, we can get that question answered for you as well and address any concerns about the potatoes with caper aioli. Cheers. Thanks, SR. Appreciate you joining us today. From Estella, hey there. Nice to see your name pop up. What's the best way to use the yacon potato? You know what? I don't know what a yacon potato is, so I am going to, yacon potato. I'm going to look that up while we talk. Yacon potato, Peruvian ground apple, possibly from the French name potato pomme de terre. The tuber, mostly comprised of, oh boy. Well, this is helpful. Thank you, Wikipedia. Their texture and flavor are very similar to jicama. Mainly differing, the yacon has some slightly sweet, resinous, and floral undertones. Wow, okay. So I'm going to guess that because it's similar to jicama, that it's going to have a high water content to it, that it's going to have a crispy texture. Again, I've not used this before, but given the very brief research I've just done, I would think that using it like jicama in salads as a main component, maybe dialing up the vinegar in a vinaigrette or the acidity from citrus to match the sweetness, which we just heard about, would be good. Also, maybe thin rounds of it mixed with radishes, something like that. So the spicy bite of radishes versus the soft, crunchy, the crunchy sweetness of the yacon. So you know what, Estella, thank you so much for this. I'm sorry to sort of fumble my way through an answer, but hey, let's explore this together. I'm going to go out and make a point of finding some yacon. And I know that you've joined us, I believe you joined us before in some of these. Your name seems very familiar. So maybe you'll join us again and ask me how my yacon adventures went. Cheers. Thanks for asking me to learn. That's the very best thing to come out of these events. Cheers. All right, from Angela T. Hey there. Do I ever add a sprinkle of MSG to kick up the umami and reduce the salt when cooking plant-based dishes? The practical answer is no. I've never done that. I came up through kitchens when MSG was sort of eschewed. It's come to be that we understand now that a lot of that is really kind of based on some anti-Asian bias, when in fact a lot of the untruths or the myths around MSG really have proven to just not be true, and that it was sort of a blanket statement which we ascribed, people like me, ascribed to an entire cuisine and to a rather important ingredient in many aspects of that cuisine. From what I understand, I'm no expert on Asian cuisine. So it was just never in my repertoire. So I've never learned how to use it, but I have nothing against it. And I can see that it would be very helpful in boosting that umami in dishes, especially sort of earthy ones, root vegetables, things like that already have a little bit of it in there, but just that little kick could really push it over the top to really good results. One thing I do understand about MSG, I believe, is that it's really best when paired with a little bit of acidity. Acidity and umami both kind of act in similar ways to draw out and enhance the flavors that are naturally in the other ingredients. And the acidity and the umami richness is a really good pairing, whether it's lime juice, a little bit of brown vinegar, rice wine vinegar, etc. Those would be my recommendations, because any vegetable dishes, just by and large, are better with a bit of acidity in them anyway. So sort of a 1-2 punch there, but good for you for exploring that ingredient. Cheers. And again, join us again back and let me know how it goes if you do experiment with it. I'd love to hear from you. All right, and last question here from Mike K. Do you need to boil or steam tempeh before you cook with it? Again, I'm not an expert on this. The few times that I have cooked with tempeh, I have steamed it or simmered it ahead of time, poached it. just to kind of set it and hydrate it a little bit. So that's what I've got for you there. But again, I will ask my colleague Richard to forward that on to some of my colleagues who are really full on in the plant space there, and we'll get you a great answer via email. All right, so if that's the end of the questions, nobody wants to know about unicorns or like the Easter Bunny or anything else? No? Okay. Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate all of you so much. Thanks for being a part of the Ruby family. Thanks for joining me and spending some of your day with me. It's an honor and a pleasure. I am grateful for you. I hope that you cook with love, cook with meaning, cook with intent, cook with gratitude, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers, y'all.